This video is intended to help people understand how the Negroid race existed globally and served as the foundation of civilization, and how many regions gradually transitioned into Mongoloid and Caucasoid territories through a combination of science and historical shifts.
While some conspiracies, ancient tales, and historical accounts suggest that the Mongoloid and Caucasoid races may have been genetically engineered by ancient intelligent civilizations to build in certain climates or to wage war against other melanated populations, this idea remains speculative. However, it may help explain why both groups often idolized black figures, possibly those who created them or from whom they directly descended. But that discussion is for another day. From over 50,000 years ago until around 6,000 years ago, the Negroid race was the only race present whom had previously developed various features to adapt to different environments within a 100,000 years. However, these adaptations did not result in significant skin tone changes. These distinct groups of Negroid peoples established civilizations across the globe and maintained trade networks until conflicts, natural disasters, and famines caused many of those societies to collapse or become abandoned. The unique genes they developed over time would eventually lead to gradual changes in phenotype among some of their descendants, not instantly, but in phases. Two major genes in particular became influential around 6,000 years ago. OCA2, which is unique to the Mongoloid race. SLC24A5, which is unique to the Caucasoid race. These two genes and others eventually gave rise to the Mongoloid race in Asia, between present-day Siberia and China, and the Caucasoid race in Asia around the area of modern-day Turkey. Prior to their emergence, civilizations based on math, science, and spirituality had already been created by different Negroid populations. Although these groups were all phenotypically black, they were not closely related due to regional adaptations. Some had long hair, woolly hair, or curly hair, and various iron hair colors existed, traits that still appear in unadmixed black populations today, such as those in the Solomon Islands. As time progressed, some Negroid populations living in regions like Siberia and China gradually transitioned into the Mongoloid phenotype. They did not immediately replace the existing population but became more prevalent over time, likely due to reproductive isolation or possibly being viewed by their Negroid counterparts as spiritually unnatural, diseased, or fit primarily for labor in cold environments. This would eventually lead to a population increase of Mongoloid peoples. A similar process occurred with the Caucasoid race, which emerged in the region of Siberia as well but transitioned into its Caucasian stage in Turkey. Like the Mongoloid group, they too were initially isolated and eventually spread. Over the next few thousand years, both groups began migrating, either settling in distinct areas or intermixing with Negroid tribes already living in those areas. This intermixing would result in subtle phenotypic shifts among these populations. Although key traits like hair and skin remained largely intact, it wasn't until thousands of years later that these new racial groups formed their own armies and began waves of invasion, often fueled by the trauma of past isolation or mistreatment by Negroid populations. From that point forward, they expanded in multiple directions, conquering territories, imposing caste systems, and positioning themselves politically to control narratives. They also adopted and repurposed the architecture and cultural symbols of earlier civilizations as their own. A major advantage in these efforts was that many Negroid civilizations were already at war with one another and had even used Mongoloid and Caucasoid groups as mercenaries in earlier conflicts. This internal conflict made it easier for outside groups to divide, conquer, and eventually dominate. Over time, these efforts escalated into large-scale racial conflicts between Negroid, Mongoloid, and Caucasoid populations. Eventually, organized religion was introduced to pacify and unify these groups within their regions. But even religion wasn't enough for some. Many factions still sought to expand and dominate under religious banners rather than racial ones. This is why, over time, the features depicted in global artifacts began to shift from Negroid phenotypes to Mongoloid and Caucasoid ones, marking a change not only in population demographics but in who held power over history and legacy.